presented by Soundlibra.com. Explore more titles via the link in the description or at Soundlibra.com. Welcome to the Decisive Mind. Today, we explore the paralysis of indecision.
It's a frustrating experience, Alex. That feeling of being stuck, unable to move forward with a choice, no matter how small.
Before we dive into those feelings, though, a quick heads up. While we're discussing mental habits and psychology today, this isn't medical or clinical advice. If you're struggling with your mental health, it's always best to consult with a professional.
That's a great point. So, back to that feeling of being stuck. It's like being on a treadmill, expending a lot of energy but getting nowhere.
Exactly, Lisa. This isn't just about choosing what to have for dinner. Indecision can seep into every aspect of our lives, from career paths to personal relationships, and it can hold us back from so much potential. We often find ourselves staring at a list of options, and instead of making a choice, we end up choosing to make no choice at all. This is what we call indecision paralysis.
And it's so common. You might have a pressing deadline, a big opportunity, or even just a simple task, and yet you can't seem to make up your mind.
This podcast series is all about helping you break free from that. We're here to equip you with the tools and mindset to become a more decisive person. In this first episode, we're going to unpack why we get stuck, looking at some of the common psychological roots of indecision. Think of it as understanding the enemy before we learn how to defeat it.
So, what are some of these common culprits behind our inability to decide?
One of the biggest is the fear of regret. We worry that if we make the wrong choice, we'll look back and wish we'd done something differently. This fear can be so powerful that it prevents us from choosing anything at all in an attempt to avoid any potential negative outcome. We imagine future selves lamenting past decisions.
That makes sense. It's like wanting to guarantee a perfect outcome, which is, of course, impossible. So, to avoid any chance of imperfection, we freeze.
Precisely. And closely related to that is perfectionism. For the perfectionist, there's often a belief that there's a single perfect choice and anything less is a failure. This can be incredibly burdensome. The pressure to find that one flawless option can be overwhelming, leading to endless deliberation.
So, instead of aiming for a good outcome, we're chasing an elusive perfect outcome, and that chase itself becomes the reason we don't move.
You've got it. Another significant factor is what's often called option paralysis. This happens when we have too many choices. While variety can be good, an overwhelming number of options can make any single choice feel less significant and make the process of elimination incredibly daunting. Imagine walking into a grocery store with 100 different kinds of peanut butter. Which one do you pick? The sheer volume can lead to confusion and inaction.
I've definitely experienced that. You stand there for ages, debating the subtle differences, and sometimes just leave without buying any.
It's a real phenomenon. Our brains aren't always wired to handle an infinite stream of choices efficiently. And beyond these cognitive biases, there are also emotional components. Sometimes, indecision stems from a lack of self-trust. We may not feel confident in our own judgment or our ability to assess situations accurately. This can lead us to constantly seek external validation or advice, delaying our own decision-making process.
So, we're not just afraid of making the wrong choice, but we also don't quite trust ourselves to make any choice.
Exactly. It's a cycle. We feel indecisive, which erodes our confidence, which makes us more indecisive. We also need to consider commitment. Sometimes, indecision is an unconscious way of avoiding commitment. Committing to a decision means closing off other possibilities. For some, this act of closing doors can feel like a loss, prompting them to keep all options open indefinitely.
That's a powerful insight. It's not just about picking the best path, but about the act of choosing a path and walking down it, which inherently means not walking down others.
Indeed, these are some of the foundational reasons why we struggle with indecision. It's complex, weaving together our fears, our thought patterns, and our trust in ourselves. But the good news is understanding these roots is the first step towards overcoming them. This series is going to be our journey into building a more decisive mind. We'll explore practical strategies, mental frameworks, and actionable steps to help you move from wavering to commitment.
It's incredibly encouraging to know that these are common human experiences and that there are ways to navigate them. So, to recap, we've touched on the fear of regret, perfectionism, option paralysis, a lack of self-trust, and the avoidance of commitment as key drivers of indecision.
That's a great summary, Lisa. And knowing these challenges is the perfect prelude to building our skills. In our next episode, we're going to discuss trusting your gut. It's about tapping into that intuitive knowing that often gets drowned out by doubt and overthinking.
I'm really looking forward to that. Trusting our gut sounds like a powerful antidote to all this indecision.
It absolutely is. Join us for our next episode. Next episode, unlocking your inner compass, trusting your gut. Welcome back. Last time we covered the paralysis of indecision. Now let's tackle trusting your gut.
It sounds so simple, Alex, but then there's that nagging question. Is it really my gut, or just a fleeting thought or a fear of missing out? That's where I often get tripped up.
That's the million-dollar question, Lisa, and it's one many people grapple with. Your gut feeling, often called intuition, is a powerful tool for decision-making. It's that deep sense of knowing that arises without conscious reasoning. Think of it as your internal wisdom system, processing information far more quickly and subtly than your logical mind.
So, it's not about just blindly following any quick thought that pops into my head?
Exactly. The key is learning to distinguish between genuine intuition and other, less reliable signals. Genuine intuition often feels calm, steady, and expansive. It doesn't scream at you, it whispers. It feels aligned with your core self. Impulsive reactions, on the other hand, might be driven by immediate desires, anxieties, or the pressure to conform. They can feel frantic, urgent, and narrow.
That makes sense. When I have a strong gut feeling about something, it often feels like a quiet certainty. It's not necessarily loud, but it's there, a solid knowing.
Precisely. And that certainty comes from your brain making connections based on a vast amount of subconscious information. Your life experiences, learned patterns, and even sensory input you might not be consciously aware of. It's a form of intelligence, and like any intelligence, it can be honed.
How do we go about honing it? I'm ready to practice.
Fantastic. One of the most effective ways to build your gut intelligence is through mindfulness. When you're present, you're better able to tune into those subtle internal signals. Simple practices like focusing on your breath for a few minutes can create the mental space needed.
So, just taking a few mindful breaths can help me connect with my intuition?
It could be that straightforward. During those moments of quiet, ask yourself a question you're wrestling with. Don't force an answer. Just sit with the question and notice any sensations or feelings that arise. Is there a subtle pull in a certain direction? A sense of unease about another?
Okay, I can see how that would create a calmer internal environment. What else can we do?
Journaling is another incredible tool. After you've made a decision, or even when you're contemplating one, write down your initial gut feeling. Describe the sensations. Where do you feel in your body? Is it a tightness in your chest, a lightness in your stomach, or something else? Don't censor yourself.
So, essentially, I'm creating a logbook of my intuitive experiences? That sounds incredibly helpful for tracking patterns.
Absolutely. Over time, you'll start to recognize what true intuition feels like for you. And here's a crucial point. Trusting your gut doesn't mean abandoning logic. It's about integrating your logical thinking with your intuitive insights. They are not opposed. They're complementary. Your logic helps you analyze the facts, while your intuition offers deeper wisdom and guidance.
That's a really important distinction. I think many of us feel like it's an either-or situation. I've heard people say, "Oh, I'm very logical, so I don't trust my gut," or "My gut told me to do it," without considering the logical implications.
Exactly. Imagine you're choosing a travel destination. Your logical mind might present data on flight costs, weather, and safety ratings. Your gut feeling might then whisper, "This place just feels right," or perhaps, "I have a strange feeling about this location." By combining both, you make a more robust, well-rounded decision. You might find a destination that ticks all the logical boxes and gives you that resonant feeling of aliveness.
So, it's about getting that cohesive picture. And I suppose when we practice noticing these feelings, we're also learning more about ourselves and what truly resonates with us on a deeper level.
You've hit on a key point. As you hone your intuition, you're also gaining clarity on your core values. What truly matters to you? Your intuition often nudges you toward decisions that are aligned with those fundamental values, even if you haven't consciously articulated them. We'll explore values in more detail. They form a critical part of your decision-making foundation.
I'm already excited for that episode. So, to recap for our listeners, trusting your gut is about developing a discerning awareness of your inner wisdom. It's not impulsive, it's a learned skill. We can cultivate it through mindfulness practices to create calm and by journaling our intuitive experiences to recognize their patterns. And remember, the goal is to weave logic and intuition together for more effective decisions.
An excellent summary, Lisa. Start small. Pay attention to those subtle nudges. The more you practice, the stronger and more reliable your inner compass will become. You'll find yourself navigating choices with greater confidence and a deeper sense of inner alignment.
It feels empowering just to think about it, tapping into that innate wisdom we all possess.
Indeed. So, to all our listeners, take a moment today to just listen. Listen to that quiet voice within. It's there guiding you. Next episode, the foundation of values, what truly matters. Welcome back to the Decisive Mind. Last time, we explored the power of trusting your gut instinct. Today, we're laying the groundwork for truly confident decision-making by digging into something fundamental, your values.
That's right, Alex. It sounds simple, but how often do we actually stop to think about what our core values are? We get caught up in the day-to-day, or that paralyzing indecision we talked about in episode 1, and we make choices without a true compass.
And that's where the trouble begins. When our decisions aren't aligned with our deepest values, it creates internal conflict. We might make a choice, but then second guess it. We feel a nagging sense of unease, even if the outcome seems objectively good. This is because we're acting against our own internal code.
So, it's like trying to build a house on shaky ground. If the foundation isn't solid, the whole structure is vulnerable. Our values are that solid foundation for our decisions.
That's a perfect analogy, Lisa. Think of your values as your personal guiding principles. They're the beliefs that are most important to you, the things that shape your outlook on life and how you want to live it. They answer the question, what's truly important to me?
And when we know these values, it makes it so much easier to navigate choices, especially the tough ones. Instead of getting lost in the pros and cons of every single option, we can ask ourselves, which option best reflects my commitment to honesty, or which aligns with my value of continuous learning?
Precisely. Let's explore how we can uncover these fundamental values. It's not always an easy process, but it's incredibly rewarding. One effective way is to reflect on times you felt most proud or times you felt most energized, even during difficult situations. What was happening then? What principles were you upholding?
That's a great starting point. Focusing on positive experiences. What about negative ones? Does reflecting on times we felt regret or dissatisfaction offer clues?
Absolutely. Sometimes what we don't want can teach us a lot about what we do want. If you consistently feel resentful when you're working excessive overtime, it might point to a strong value around work-life balance or personal well-being. Conversely, if you feel a surge of pride after helping a colleague, that likely highlights a value like collaboration or service.
So, it's about looking for patterns in our feelings and actions across different situations.
Exactly. Another technique is to imagine you're writing your own obituary. What do you want to be remembered for? What qualities do you hope people associate with your life? The themes that surface are often deeply connected to your core values.
That's a powerful exercise. It forces you to think about legacy and what truly endures beyond the day to day.
It really does. Now, to help our listeners solidify this, let's offer a simplified way to categorize values. While there are countless individual values, many fall into broader themes. Think about categories like integrity, which includes honesty and ethical behavior, growth, encompassing learning, curiosity, and personal development, connection, like family, friendship, and community, contribution, meaning making a difference, service, or impact, and well-being, covering health, balance, and peace of mind.
Those are excellent categories, Alex. It helps to see how different, specific values can fit under a larger umbrella. For instance, the value of being a good listener might fall under connection, while the desire to finish a challenging fitness program could be tied to well-being and contribution.
You've got it. I encourage everyone listening to jot down a few values that resonate strongly with them, drawing from these categories or coming up with their own. Aim for your top 3 to 5 values. These are your anchors.
And once you have those anchors, how do you begin to consciously apply them to your decisions?
This is where the magic happens, connecting back to our earlier episodes. When you're faced with multiple options, instead of getting lost in the minutiae, you can filter them through your values. For example, if honesty is a core value, you can immediately discount any option that feels less than truthful, even if it seems easier in the short term.
So, our values act as a filter, immediately narrowing down the choices and making the remaining ones feel more aligned and less daunting. It silences some of the mental noise.
Precisely. It's like having a built-in decision-making framework. Let's take a practical example. Imagine you're choosing between two job offers. Offer A pays slightly more, but involve a long commute and a work culture that seems to lack collaboration. Offer B pays a bit less, but offers flexible hours, a shorter commute, and a team that values teamwork.
If my core values are, let's say, work-life balance, community, and personal growth, then offer B clearly aligns better. The higher salary of offer A suddenly becomes less appealing when weighed against those fundamental priorities.
Exactly. You're not just looking at salary. You're looking at long-term fulfillment and alignment with who you are. This connection between values and decisions builds incredible confidence. When you know you're making choices that reflect what's truly important to you, there's less room for regret or second-guessing, even when facing challenges.
It really creates a sense of authenticity and purpose in our decision-making process. It moves us beyond just reacting to circumstances and towards proactively shaping our lives according to what matters most.
This foundation of values is crucial. It empowers us to move forward with conviction. And speaking of moving forward, next time we'll dive into practical strategies for actually making those decisions with speed and confidence. We'll move beyond identifying values to actively implementing them in our daily lives.
So, don't miss our next episode where we tackle how to sprint towards action and make those confident choices.
Welcome back. Last time, we explored the foundation of your values. Now let's tackle rapid decisions.
And that's so crucial. Alex. Because knowing your values helps cut through the noise when you're faced with a decision. But the flip side of knowing what matters is actually doing something with that knowledge, right? This episode is all about taking that insight and translating it into swift, confident action.
Exactly, Lisa. This is episode 4, and we're tackling sprinting towards action, strategies for rapid decisions. We've all been there, stuck in analysis paralysis, overthinking every single option until the opportunity itself disappears. Today, we're giving you the tools to break free from that and start making decisions faster and, more importantly, effectively.
I love that framing, sprinting towards action. It sounds so much more empowering than just making a decision. So, Alex, where do we begin with helping our listeners spring into action?
Let's start with a simple yet powerful concept, the 2-minute rule. Have you heard of this, Lisa?
I have.
It's the idea that if a task takes less than 2 minutes, you should do it immediately. But how does that apply to bigger decisions?
It applies by shifting your mindset. For decisions, it means if you can make a reasonably good decision in about 2 minutes, just make it. Don't overthink it. Think of those small, everyday choices. What to have for breakfast? Which route to take to work? Who to reply to an email from first? These don't need deep contemplation. Your previous understanding of your values can even help here. Does one option align better? Great, pick that one and move on.
So, it's about recognizing what doesn't require extensive deliberation. It's about immediate, low stakes action.
Precisely. Now, for slightly more complex decisions, but still those that need to be made relatively quickly, we can use a framework that helps categorize and prioritize. One powerful tool here is a variation of the Eisenhower matrix, often called the urgent important matrix.
Ah, the urgent important matrix. I've seen this used for task management. How does it work for decisions?
Think of it as 4 quadrants. We have urgent and important, important but not urgent, urgent but not important, and neither urgent nor important. When you face a decision, you mentally place it into one of these. Decisions that are urgent and important need immediate action. These are often crises or pressing deadlines. Decisions that are important but not urgent are crucial for long-term goals but don't have an immediate time constraint. This is where strategic choices usually live. Urgent but not important decisions are distractions. They demand your attention but don't contribute to your core objectives. And finally, neither urgent nor important decisions are time wasters that can often be eliminated entirely.
So, by quickly assessing a decision's urgency and importance, you know how much mental energy and time to dedicate to it. You can immediately distinguish between a critical choice requiring swift action and one that can be delegated or even ignored.
Exactly. And this leads us to another key strategy for rapid decision-making, setting time limits. For any decision that isn't a true crisis, give yourself a deadline. Say, I will decide on X by the end of today, or I will make this choice within the next hour.
That feels a bit scary, doesn't it? Like putting yourself on the clock can add pressure.
It can, but it's a healthy pressure. It forces you to focus on gathering the essential information and evaluating your options within a practical time frame. It prevents endless rumination. Remember our discussion on values? Use them as your quick filter here. Does option A align better with your core values than option B? If so, and your time is limited, that might be enough to make the call.
So, it's not about making a perfect decision, but a good enough decision within the available time. That's a crucial distinction. The idea that done truly is better than perfect.
Absolutely. In many fast-paced environments, whether it's business, personal projects, or even dynamic social situations, a timely, imperfect decision that allows you to move forward is far more valuable than a perfectly analyzed but delayed one. Perfectionism can be the enemy of decisiveness.
That really resonates. I think many of us get stuck because we're aiming for that elusive perfect outcome. But the reality is, most decisions have a window of opportunity, and missing that window due to overthinking is a bigger loss than making a slightly less than ideal choice.
Well said, Lisa. So, To recap the strategies we've discussed for sprinting towards action. First, embrace the 2-minute rule for immediate, low-stakes decisions. Second, use a framework like the urgent important matrix to quickly assess and prioritize decisions. Third, set clear time limits for your decision-making process to avoid getting bogged down in analysis. And finally, remember that often, done truly is better than perfect, especially when speed is a factor.
Those are fantastic, actionable tips, Alex. They encourage a proactive and efficient approach to making choices. It's about building momentum.
And this momentum is crucial because, as we know, not every decision will be the right one. In our next episode, episode 5, we'll explore how to handle those inevitable missteps. We'll be talking about learning from the missteps, graceful error handling.
That sounds like a perfect follow-up, because decisiveness means being willing to act, and action inherently involves the possibility of error.
Exactly. So join us next time as we learn how to turn those mistakes into valuable learning experiences. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to the Decisive Mind. Last time, we explored strategies for rapid action, pushing past that initial hesitation to get moving. Now it's time to address a crucial part of being decisive. What happens when things don't go as planned?
Exactly, Alex. Because inevitably, we're going to make choices that, in hindsight, weren't the best. And the fear of making a wrong move can actually be a bigger blocker than making a wrong move itself. So, today we're talking about learning from missteps and handling errors gracefully.
This is so important, Lisa, because if we see every less than perfect outcome as a catastrophic failure, we'll never want to decide again. We'll be paralyzed by the potential for error.
That's a great point. So, how do we shift that mindset? How do we stop beating ourselves up and actually learn from these experiences?
The first step is acknowledging that errors are not just possible, but probable. They are a fundamental part of the learning process. Think about when a child is learning to walk. They stumble, they fall, they might even cry, but they don't think, well, walking is clearly not for me. I'm a failure. They get back up and try again.
That's a fantastic analogy. We accept that falls are part of learning to walk, but we often don't extend that same grace to ourselves when making more complex decisions in adulthood.
Precisely. So the mindset shift is crucial. Instead of viewing a misstep as a reflection of your inherent ability to make good decisions, see it as a data point. It's information gathered from experiment.
A data point. I like that. So, when a decision leads to an outcome we didn't anticipate, what's the actual process for extracting that data?
It starts with an honest, non-judgmental review. Ask yourself what happened? What was the intended outcome? And what was the actual outcome? What were the key factors that influenced the outcome? Try to separate the action from your self-worth. It's not about judging yourself. It's about understanding the situation.
So, instead of saying, I'm so stupid for doing that, you'd say, okay, I chose option A. The result was B. What were the factors at play that led from A to B?
Exactly. And be specific. Did I have incomplete information? Did I act too quickly without sufficient thought? Did external circumstances change unexpectedly? Were my initial assumptions flawed? This objective analysis is key to extracting valuable lessons.
And once you've analyzed, what's the next step? How do you turn that learning into something actionable for the future?
The next step is to identify the lesson learned. What is the core takeaway from this experience? Is it about gathering more information next time? About developing a contingency plan? About better understanding a certain type of risk? Once you've identified the lesson, you need to internalize it.
Internalize it, meaning you don't just understand it intellectually, but you truly embed it into your decision-making framework?
Yes, you might write it down, create a reminder for yourself, or even discuss it with someone trusted. The goal is to make this lesson a part of your future decision-making process. So, if the lesson was, I need more information, then in the future, when faced with a similar situation, that lesson will prompt you to seek out that additional information before committing.
So, it's about building a sort of personal wisdom bank fueled by these experiences. This really connects to building a decisive identity, doesn't it? Where setbacks don't derail you, but actually make you stronger and more capable.
Absolutely. A decisive person isn't someone who never makes mistakes. A decisive person is someone who can make a choice, act on it, and if it doesn't work out, learn from it and adapt without losing momentum. Mistakes become stepping stones, not roadblocks.
And this ability to learn from missteps also builds resilience. When you know you can handle an imperfect outcome, you're less afraid to make a strong decision in the first place.
Exactly. It's a virtuous cycle. Better analysis leads to better lessons. Better lessons lead to more confident decisions. And more confident decisions, even the ones that don't quite hit the mark, ultimately build a stronger, more decisive you. Remember when we talked about trusting your gut in episode 2? Sometimes your gut can lead you down a path that looks promising but turns out to be a dead end. Handling that gracefully, by learning from it, reinforces your ability to trust your gut in the future because you know you can recover and course correct.
You know, Alex, this episode really tackles a universal fear. Making mistakes feels awful, and our society often labels them as failures. But reframing them as opportunities to learn and grow is incredibly empowering. It allows us to move forward with more confidence and less fear of the unknown.
And that confidence is what allows for greater action. So, to recap, errors are inevitable and are valuable learning opportunities. When a decision doesn't lead to the desired outcome, conduct an honest, non-judgmental review to understand what happened and why. Identify the core lesson learned and consciously embed that lesson into your future decision-making. This process builds resilience, strengthens your decisive identity, and ultimately makes you a more capable decision maker.
It's about embracing the journey, stumbles and all. And speaking of navigating choices, especially with others involved, that's where we're heading in our next episode.
That's right. Next time, we'll discuss the art of communicating your choices clearly and effectively. It's about articulating your decisions so others understand and can support them. Next episode, clarity in communication, articulating your choices. Welcome back to the Decisive Mind. Last time, we explored how to learn gracefully from our missteps, treating errors not as failures, but as valuable feedback. Now that we've honed our decision-making process and learned from our stumbles, it's time to tackle the next crucial step, articulating those choices with clarity.
Absolutely, Alex. Making a decision is one thing, but effectively communicating it to others is a whole different skill set. It's easy to get stuck after you've made your choice, especially if you anticipate pushback or questions.
Exactly. Think of it this way. A brilliant decision, poorly communicated, can fall flat. It might not be implemented, or worse, it could create confusion and resentment. So, today we're talking about articulating your choices with confidence and clarity. We'll cover explaining the why, managing expectations, and navigating conversations when others might not immediately agree.
This sounds so practical. I'm often faced with needing to explain decisions to my team at work, or even to my family. Sometimes I feel like I say the words, but they just don't hear the reasoning behind them.
That's a very common experience, Lisa. The first key to clear communication is understanding that your listener needs more than just the outcome of your decision. They need to understand the journey that led you there. And where does that journey truly begin? It begins with our values. Remember when we emphasize that strong, value-based decisions are the most sustainable ones?
Oh, that makes so much sense. When our decisions are rooted in what truly matters to us, explaining them becomes much easier because we can connect them back to those core principles. It's not just an arbitrary choice, it's a choice that aligns with our fundamental beliefs.
Precisely. So, when you're articulating a decision, start by clearly stating the objective or the problem you're trying to solve. Then, connect your decision back to your guiding values or principles. For instance, if you're communicating a decision to cut back on a non-essential project to free up resources, you might say, "Team, we've decided to put Project X on hold for now. This wasn't an easy choice, but our priority at this moment is delivering on Project Y, which directly supports our core value of operational excellence and client commitment. Reallocating these resources will ensure we meet our key objectives for that project."
I see. So it's about framing it not just as here's what we're doing, but here's why we're doing it and how it serves our greater purpose. That makes the decision feel less arbitrary and more strategic.
Exactly. And this leads us to managing expectations. Once you've explained the why, it's crucial to be realistic about what this decision means moving forward. What are the immediate impacts? What are the potential benefits? And what are the limitations or trade-offs? Don't shy away from acknowledging that there might be challenges.
That's the part that can be tricky. Sometimes you want to present a confident, positive outlook, but ignoring potential difficulties can backfire.
It absolutely can. It's better to be upfront and say, "We anticipate that this change might lead to a temporary adjustment in our workflow as we reroute our efforts. We'll be implementing a new system to help streamline this transition, and we'll provide ongoing support." This honesty builds trust rather than creating false hopes that could later lead to disappointment.
So, it's about being transparent about the realistic outcomes, both the good and the challenging. That's a great way to set the stage for acceptance.
And this brings us to handling pushback gracefully. Because even with the clearest communication, there will always be people who have doubts, concerns, or alternative ideas. When this happens, remember that pushback isn't always a sign of opposition. It can be an opportunity for clarification and refinement.
How do you approach that without getting defensive? That's my biggest fear.
First, listen actively. Don't interrupt. Let the person fully express their concerns. Then, acknowledge their perspective. Phrases like, "I understand your concern about X," or "That's a valid point about Y," can go a long way. This shows you value their input.
So, validate their feelings or their point of view, even if you don't agree with their conclusion.
Yes, after listening and acknowledging, you can then reiterate your reasoning, perhaps highlighting how your decision addresses or has considered the point they've raised. Sometimes they might not have all the information you do, or they might be focusing on a single aspect while you're looking at the broader picture. You can say something like, "I appreciate you bringing up the potential impact on Z. We did consider that, and here's how we plan to mitigate it."
This is so helpful. It shifts the dynamic from a debate to a collaborative problem-solving effort. You're not shutting them down. You're inviting them to see your perspective and how their concern was factored in.
Exactly. It demonstrates that your decision wasn't made in a vacuum. And if their feedback genuinely introduces a better way to implement the decision or reveals a blind spot, be open to that. True clarity in communication involves a willingness to adapt if new, valuable information emerges. It's about being firm in your core decision, but flexible in its execution.
This really ties back to the idea of trust we touched on earlier. When people feel heard and understand the reasoning, even if they initially disagreed, they're more likely to support the decision.
That's the goal. Clear communication isn't just about transmitting information. It's about building alignment and fostering confidence. By explaining the why rooted in values, managing expectations realistically, and handling pushback with respect and openness, you transform your decisions from isolated events into integrated actions that move everyone forward together.
So, to recap for our listeners, when communicating a decision, always connect it back to your core values and objectives. Be transparent about the expected outcomes, both the positives and the potential challenges. And when faced with pushback, listen actively, acknowledge the concern, and then reiterate your reasoning, showing how their feedback was considered. This approach ensures your choices are not only well made, but also well understood and supported.
And that, Lisa, is how you move past the initial act of deciding and ensure your choices have real impact.
It's about making sure the people around you are on board and understand the path forward. It sounds like the perfect bridge to our next topic.
Indeed, it is. Because once you've communicated your choices clearly, you need to be ready to fully commit to them. Next episode, the power of commitment, moving beyond hesitation. Welcome back to the Decisive Mind. Last time, we honed our communication skills, learning how to clearly articulate our choices. Today, we're diving into a crucial element that takes us from stated decision to real-world progress, the power of commitment. We'll explore why committing can feel so daunting and how embracing it propels us forward.
That's right, Alex. It's one thing to make a decision, but it's entirely another to truly commit to it. And I think that's where a lot of people get stuck. They make a choice, but then they're constantly looking back, wondering if they made the right choice.
Exactly, Lisa. And that lingering doubt, that subtle temptation to unmake the decision, is often rooted in a fear of commitment. Were we really afraid of when we hesitate to commit?
Well, for starters, there's the fear of making the wrong choice. If we don't fully commit, we can always tell ourselves, well, it didn't really count because I wasn't fully committed. It's like a safety net, isn't it?
It is. And that safety net prevents us from truly experiencing the consequences of our decisions, both good and bad. Another big fear is the loss of other opportunities. When you commit to one path, for example, you're inherently saying no to many other paths.
That's a big one. It feels like closing doors. And sometimes we just aren't ready to accept that the other doors are closed, even if temporarily. Think about it like choosing a college major. Once you commit, you're focusing on that area. But what if there was a fascinating class in a different department you're now missing out on?
That's a perfect analogy. The fear of missing out, or FOMO, can be a powerful demotivator when it comes to commitment. But here's the thing. Indecision and wavering are far more costly in the long run than making a commitment and potentially having to adjust later. Indecision drains energy.
It really does. You're constantly expending mental energy reevaluating, second guessing, and worrying. Commitment, on the other hand, frees up that energy. Once you commit, you can direct your focus and resources towards making that chosen path successful. It's about moving beyond hesitation and embracing action.
Precisely. Commitment is the active ingredient that transforms a potential into a reality. It's the bridge between imagination and achievement. And it's not about being rigid or unwilling to adapt. It's about dedicating yourself to a chosen direction for now, with the understanding that learning and adaptation are part of any journey.
So, how do we cultivate this power of commitment? How do we move past the fears you mentioned?
We start by acknowledging the fears, as we've just done. Understanding them is the first step to overcoming them. Then, we need to reframe our perspective on commitment. Instead of seeing it as a loss, we can see it as a gain. It's a gain in focus, a gain in momentum, and a gain in experience.
Reframe it as a gain. I like that. So, if I commit to a new fitness routine, I'm not just losing the opportunity to sleep in, I'm gaining better health, increased energy, and a stronger body.
Exactly. You're gaining the benefits of that commitment. Another strategy is to build commitment gradually. If a big commitment feels overwhelming, break it down into smaller, more manageable steps. For instance, if you're committing to writing a book, don't think about the whole manuscript at once. Commit to writing 500 words today.
That makes sense. Small wins build confidence and reinforce the habit of commitment. It's like building momentum. Each small step you commit to and complete gives you the confidence to take the next step.
And remember the concept of values we discussed in episode 3? When your decision aligns with your core values, commitment becomes much easier. When you're acting in accordance with what truly matters to you, the hesitation fades. The decision feels inherently right, and committing to it feels natural.
That's a great callback. So, if my core value is, say, continuous learning, committing to a challenging new project at work, even if it's daunting, feels more natural because it aligns with that value.
Indeed. And as we move from making decisions to committing to them, we also need to be mindful of second guessing. The what ifs can be powerful saboteurs of commitment. When that urge to second guess strikes, remind yourself of why you made the initial decision. Revisit your reasoning, your values, and the potential positive outcomes.
So, it's about anchoring yourself back to the original intention. Another thing that comes to mind is the idea of creating a sense of finality. When we're learning to commit, sometimes we need to actively create that sense that the decision has been made and is now moving forward.
Absolutely. This could be as simple as publicly stating your commitment or setting a deadline for yourself to stop reevaluating. It's about taking actions that solidify the decision in your mind and in practice. Think of it as building a mental fence around your chosen path, giving you a clear area to focus your energy.
Building a mental fence. I can picture that. And by doing this, we're not just making one decision stick, we're building a foundational skill. Each time we successfully commit, we strengthen our ability to commit in the future. It's about building a decisive identity.
Precisely, Lisa. A decisive identity is one where commitment is a natural outcome of your decision-making process. It's where you trust your ability to make good choices and to navigate any challenges that arise from those choices. Commitment becomes less of a struggle and more of a natural progression.
So, to recap, commitment is the act of fully embracing a decision and dedicating yourself to its pursuit. Fears like making the wrong choice or losing opportunities can hinder commitment. We can overcome these by acknowledging the fears, reframing commitment as a gain, breaking down big commitments, aligning decisions with our values, resisting second guessing, and actively creating a sense of finality. By doing so, we build our capacity for commitment and strengthen our decisive identity.
You've nailed it, Lisa. And this ability to commit is what truly separates a life of intention from a life of passive existence. It's what allows us to build, to grow, and to achieve what we set out to do.
It really is the engine that drives progress.
Indeed. Now, as we focused on the power of commitment today, we also need to acknowledge that sometimes the sheer number of options can make commitment feel overwhelming. So, in our next episode, we'll explore practical strategies for simplifying the landscape of your choices so that commitment becomes not just possible, but also more intuitive.
Simplifying choices sounds like a brilliant complement to building commitment. Looking forward to it.
Next episode, simplifying the landscape, reducing option overload. Welcome back to the Decisive Mind. Last time we covered the power of commitment. Now, we're tackling a huge hurdle, option overload.
That's such a relatable topic, Alex. Too many choices can lead to paralysis, that feeling of not being able to pick anything because you don't want to miss out. It's like a mental traffic jam.
Exactly. That choice paralysis drains your mental energy. Your brain tries to evaluate every possibility, which makes any decision feel monumental.
So, it's having too many options that causes the problem?
Precisely. Think about scrolling for a show to watch. The longer you search, the less likely you are to actually pick something. You spend more time searching than enjoying. This is option overload.
Oh, I've definitely been there. So, how do we simplify this landscape and reduce overwhelming choices?
First, impose self-imposed constraints. Limit the number of options you consider from start. For example, if buying something, decide on a price range or trusted brand beforehand.
So, you set boundaries before exploring? Instead of 100 possibilities, you look at 10. That makes a big difference.
It really does. Another technique is categorizing choices. If planning something complex, group related items like essentials, nice to haves, and optional extras. Then, narrow down within each category.
That's a great way to organize chaos. It breaks down a big task into smaller, manageable parts. It feels less like an endless search and more like a structured exploration.
It helps you see the forest for the trees. You might realize some options don't fit your priorities. This leads us to focusing on essential criteria, or your non-negotiables.
This sounds like it brings us back to values, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Remember uncovering your core values? Those values are your ultimate filter. Ask yourself, does this align with my values? If not, eliminate the option.
So, instead of getting bogged down in details, you use your values as a signpost pointing to what matters. It's like having a guiding star.
Exactly. If you value efficiency and one option is more time-consuming but accomplishes the same goal, your value might lead you to choose the faster path. You've simplified your decision.
That's a powerful application of our principles. To recap, reducing option overload, impose constraints, categorize choices, and use essential criteria, especially your core values, to filter.
You've got it. And by doing this, you're making better decisions. Less mental load means your brain can evaluate the quality of the remaining options. This leads to less second-guessing and more confidence.
It feels like a virtuous cycle. The less overwhelmed you are, the clearer your thinking becomes, which helps you set better constraints for future decisions.
Precisely. Think of it like cleaning up your workspace. When your desk is cluttered, it's stressful. When you tidy up, you can focus on the task more effectively. Reducing options is like tidying your decision-making workspace.
I love that analogy. It makes the abstract concept of mental overload tangible. By actively simplifying, we're empowering ourselves to act decisively.
That's the key takeaway. Simplification isn't about deprivation. It's about creating optimal conditions for effective decision-making. More isn't always better.
So, for anyone feeling overwhelmed, be proactive, set limits, organize your thoughts, and let your values guide you.
Well put, Lisa. And this ability to simplify and make choices impacts our interactions. Which leads us perfectly into our next episode, where we'll explore making decisive choices in relationships.
Navigating choices as a duo or team sounds like a whole new challenge. I'm looking forward to that.
Next episode, Decisive Relationships, Navigating Choices Together. Welcome back to The Decisive Mind. Today, we're exploring decisive relationships.
That's right, Alex. It's so easy to get caught up in our own decision-making process, but relationships add a whole new layer of complexity. Indecision in a relationship can feel like a constant source of friction.
Absolutely. If one person is consistently unable to make up their mind, it can lead to frustration, resentment, and a general feeling of being stuck. It's like being on a boat where the captain can't decide which way to steer.
And that drifting can cause a lot of damage. It erodes trust. When you can't rely on someone to make a clear choice, it's hard to feel secure.
Exactly. Decisiveness in relationships builds a foundation of trust. It shows respect for the relationship and for the other person's time and energy.
So, how do we cultivate this decisiveness when another person is part of the equation?
The first principle is clear communication. which we touched upon before. When a decision needs to be made that affects both parties, it's crucial to have an open and honest conversation. This means actively listening to the other person's perspective, understanding their needs and concerns.
So, it's not just about your decision anymore, it's about a joint understanding.
Precisely. And this ties back to understanding your core values. When you know what truly matters to you, it's easier to articulate your priorities in a joint decision-making process. Then, you can see how your values align, or sometimes how they might differ.
And when values differ, that's where it gets tricky.
It can be, but it doesn't have to be a deal breaker. It requires compromise and a willingness to find common ground. Sometimes, it's about finding a solution that might not be anyone's first choice, but it's a choice that respects both individuals and moves the relationship forward. This is where addressing missteps gracefully comes into play too. If a joint decision doesn't work out as planned, you can address it together with empathy.
That makes sense. So, communication and understanding each other's values are key. What about when one person is naturally more decisive than the other?
That's a common dynamic. If you're the more decisive one, it's important not to dominate the conversation. Give your partner space to voice their thoughts and feelings. You can act as a facilitator, helping them articulate their preferences and guiding them towards a choice rather than making the choice for them. The goal is collaborative decision-making when appropriate.
And if you're the one who struggles with decisions in a relationship, you need to be aware of your patterns and actively work on them. Perhaps by doing some internal value assessment or by practicing making smaller decisions independently.
Exactly. Being proactive is key. And when it comes to making choices together, such as where to live, financial decisions, or even planning a vacation, establishing a shared process is vital. This process could involve dedicating specific times to discuss these matters, setting clear agendas, and agreeing on how final decision will be made.
I like the idea of having a process for big decisions. It removes some of the ambiguity. So, we've talked about communication, values, and compromise. Are there specific strategies for when you're presented with multiple options within a relationship decision?
Yes, absolutely. This is a great place to bring back reducing the overwhelm of too many choices. Just because you're making a decision together doesn't mean you need to list every single possibility on the planet. You can collaboratively narrow down the options to a manageable few. Perhaps each person brings their top 2 or 3 choices to the table, and then you discuss those together.
That's a smart way to approach it. It prevents the overwhelm that can lead to indecision in the first place. So, let's summarize for our listeners. Decisive relationships are built on 1. Open and honest communication, where active listening is paramount. 2. A shared understanding of core values, helping to prioritize what truly matters for both individuals. 3. A willingness to compromise and find common ground when different perspectives arise. And 4. Establishing clear processes for making joint decisions, especially for significant choices.
Well said, Lisa. And remember, this decisiveness doesn't mean being rigid or unwilling to change your mind if new information comes to light. It means having the confidence to make a choice, commit to it for a reasonable period, and then evaluate its effectiveness together. This builds momentum and a sense of shared progress.
It feels like being decisive in relationships is also about demonstrating confidence in your partner and in the relationship itself. It's a beautiful synergy.
It truly is. When partners can make decisions together effectively, it strengthens their bond, reduces conflict, and allows them to face life's challenges with a united front.
So, think about your own relationships. Are decisions flowing smoothly, or is there a sense of constant hesitation?
And if it's the latter, consider which of these principles you can start implementing today. Small shifts in communication or a willingness to explore each other's values can make a world of difference.
It's about moving forward together with confidence.
Indeed. Next episode, we're going to shift gears and explore some more advanced tools for decision making, decisive leadership.
I'm looking forward to that.
Thanks for listening. Welcome back to the Decisive Mind. Last time, we explored navigating choices in relationships. Now, we're focusing on leadership and inspiring action.
We've talked a lot about personal decisions, but how does decisiveness translate to inspiring action in others when you're a leader?
It's where our previous discussions truly come into play. A decisive leader makes confident choices and rallies others. Who do you trust more in uncertainty? Someone who waffles or someone who provides a clear path?
The one with confidence and clarity, for sure. A leader's indecision can create anxiety and confusion, leading to inaction.
Exactly. A leader's confidence often stems from aligning with their foundational values, as we discussed. These values act as an anchor. So asking, does this align with who we are, can be very clarifying.
So, a leader's personal decisiveness is amplified because they influence many others. What are key ways a decisive leader demonstrates confidence to their team?
Communicating the why behind a decision is powerful. Explaining the reasoning, the objective, and the expected outcome helps the team understand the bigger picture and buy into the direction. Clear communication is crucial.
If people understand why a path is chosen, they're more likely to commit, even with challenges. It turns a directive into a shared mission.
Precisely. Handling missteps gracefully is also vital. Even decisive leaders err. Great leaders own the outcome, learn, and adjust course. This resilience is infectious and shows the team that calculated risks are okay and challenges are growth opportunities, not reasons to freeze.
That builds trust and empowers a team. If errors are learning opportunities, people feel safer taking initiative.
Absolutely. Effective delegation is another key. A decisive leader knows they can't do it all. They empower team members by trusting them with responsibility, providing resources, and then stepping back. This is strategic distribution, showing faith in abilities.
So, it's finding the right person, clearly stating expectations, and giving autonomy. That connects to our earlier talk about understanding what truly matters and acting on that knowledge.
You've nailed it, Lisa. This delegation fosters decisiveness within the team. When individuals make decisions within their scope, they develop their own decision-making muscles, learning to assess, weigh options, and commit.
It's a cascading effect. Leaders' decisiveness builds confidence, enabling clear communication, graceful error handling, effective delegation, and empowering the team to be more decisive.
Precisely. A decisive leader creates a positive culture. They set the tone, demonstrating that while hesitation is a choice, action is often more powerful. This encourages innovation, efficiency, and ownership within the team, moving towards purposeful action.
So, leaders should solidify their own decisiveness, drawing on our series principles. Then, project confidence through clear, value driven communication, embrace learning from mistakes, and empower the team through trust and delegation.
That's a perfect summary, Lisa. When a leader embodies these traits, they don't just make decisions. They inspire a movement, building resilient, confident teams ready to face challenges.
It's about building a robust, capable team, which amplifies a leader's impact.
Indeed, as we near the end of our series, our next episode shifts to nurturing decisiveness in the next generation. We'll discuss how to raise decisive children.
That's a perfect topic after leadership. So, next time, we'll focus on teaching decisiveness from a young age.
That's right. Join us for episode 11, Raising Decisive Children, Nurturing Future Confidence. The decisive mind will return. Welcome back to the Decisive Mind. We're moving into the final stretch of our series. Today, we're tackling a topic close to many of our hearts, raising decisive children.
That's right, Alex. It's so easy to get caught up in our own decision-making skills, but thinking about how we can pass on this crucial ability is vital. How do we nurture that confidence in our kids right from the start?
It really begins with understanding that decisiveness isn't just about making big, life-altering choices. It's a muscle that needs to be flexed with everyday situations. Think about a toddler choosing between two toys or a young child deciding what to wear. These are incredibly formative moments.
So, instead of us always stepping in to make the choice for them, we should be creating opportunities for them to practice?
Exactly. The first key strategy is offering age-appropriate choices. For very young children, it might be as simple as, would you like the red cup or the blue cup for your water? This gives them a sense of agency, the feeling that their preference matters.
And that's building on the idea of knowing what you want, which we talked about in terms of personal values, right? Even at a young age, they're starting to understand their own preferences.
Precisely. As they grow, those choices become more complex. For a 7-year-old, it might be deciding between two healthy snack options or choosing which book to read before bed. The principle remains: give them the reins on small, manageable decisions. This is how they learn self-trust.
I imagine for some parents, it can be tempting to just pick the quickest option or the one they think is best for their child. But you're saying that enabling them to choose, even if it's not our preferred choice, is more beneficial in the long run?
Absolutely. It's about fostering responsibility. When a child makes a choice, they also learn to live with the consequence of that choice. If they choose to wear shorts on a chilly day, they'll feel the cold and learn from that experience. It's not about letting them suffer, but about allowing natural learning to occur.
That's a really important distinction. So, the natural consequence becomes the teacher. What about when they make a wrong choice or indecision sets in? How do we guide them then without taking over?
This is where we bring in the lessons from earlier in our series, particularly about learning from missteps. Instead of criticizing, we can ask gentle, probing questions. If a child is struggling to choose an outfit, for instance, you might ask, what kind of day are you hoping for? A warm, sunny day or a cool, breezy one? This prompts them to consider their criteria, much like we do when making bigger decisions.
Oh, I like that. You're helping them think through the process rather than just giving them the answer. And this is also about communication so they can articulate why they made that choice.
Yes, encourage them to explain their reasoning. Why did you choose that toy to play with first? Or what made you decide to start your homework now? This verbalization solidifies their thought process and builds confidence in their ability to explain their decisions. It's laying the groundwork for articulation, which we covered earlier.
So we're giving them choices, allowing them to experience consequences, and helping them articulate their reasoning. What else can we do to build that decisive muscle?
Another powerful tool is to let them take ownership of small projects or tasks. This could be planning a simple family outing, choosing the ingredients for a pizza night, or even organizing their bookshelf. When they lead the process from decision-making to execution, it instills a deep sense of capability.
That sounds like it's really empowering them and building that sense of commitment we discussed earlier. They've chosen it, they're invested in it.
Precisely. And we can also model decisiveness ourselves. Children are sponges. They watch how we approach our own decisions, how we weigh options, and how we commit to a path. Talking through your own decision-making process with them, using simple terms, can be incredibly instructive.
So, if you're planning a weekend activity, you can say something like, I'm trying to decide if we should go to the park or the museum. The park sounds fun for running around, but the museum might be good to learn something new. What do you think?
That's a perfect example. You're not just dictating, you're inviting them into the thinking process, showing them that decisions involve gathering information and considering different outcomes. This also naturally touches upon the idea of reducing option overload by presenting a manageable set of possibilities.
It's fascinating how all these concepts we've explored throughout the series weave together so beautifully when applied to raising children. From understanding values to managing risk, it all plays a part.
It really does. And it's crucial to remember that this is a journey. There will be moments of hesitation, of second guessing, both for the child and the parent. The key is consistent encouragement and a safe space for them to practice. We want to nurture, not just demand, decisiveness. When they see us trusting their choices, even the small ones, they begin to trust themselves more.
So, to recap for our listeners, raising decisive children involves offering age appropriate choices to foster agency and self trust, allowing natural consequences to teach responsibility, guiding them to articulate their reasoning, empowering them with ownership of tasks and projects, and modeling decisive behavior ourselves.
That sums it up wonderfully, Lisa. By regularly offering these opportunities and providing gentle guidance, we're not just raising kids who can make choices. We're raising confident, capable individuals who are prepared to navigate the complexities of life with a decisive mind.
It's such an empowering thought. It really feels like we're equipping them for their future.
Absolutely. And as we near the end of our series, it's a perfect moment to reflect on how all these skills, decisiveness in our own lives, in our relationships, in leadership, and now in parenting, contribute to the holistic picture of a decisive identity. Next episode, long-term vision and decisive strategy.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Thanks for listening. Welcome back to The Decisive Mind. Last time, we explored raising decisive children. Today, we're bringing it all together.
It feels like we've covered so much ground. We've gone from understanding indecision to trusting our gut, defining our values, taking action, handling mistakes, communicating effectively, committing to our choices, simplifying our options, making decisions in relationships, and even leading others. Now, it's about making it all one cohesive whole, a part of our identity.
Exactly, Lisa. Think of it like this. Imagine all the skills we've discussed. Knowing your values, listening to your intuition, acting quickly, learning from setbacks, communicating clearly, and committing as different colors of paint. For a long time, you might have had these colors in separate jars. Now, we're going to mix them together to create your unique, decisive masterpiece. It's about your identity, the very essence of how you approach the world and make choices.
So, it's not just about having these skills, but about them becoming natural, almost second nature. They become part of your personality.
Precisely. It's about integration. Let's revisit the idea of your inner compass, which we discussed way back in episode 2. Remember how we talked about your gut feeling, that intuitive nudge? That's a core part of your decisive identity. When you've defined your values, as we did in episode 3, and you get that intuitive nudge, it's much easier to trust it because you know it's aligned with what truly matters to you.
That makes sense. So, when faced with a choice, your internal values act as a filter, and your intuition provides the immediate signal. Then, if you've practiced rapid decision making, like we talked about in episode 4, you don't get stuck in analysis paralysis.
You've got it. And what happens when you make a choice and it doesn't turn out perfectly? We learned about graceful error handling in episode 5. A decisive identity doesn't fear mistakes. It sees them as data. You learned, you adjusted, and you moved forward. This resilience is crucial for a strong, decisive identity. You don't let a misstep define you. You let your response to it define you.
And communicating your choices clearly from episode 6 is also key. When your identity is decisive, you can articulate your decisions with confidence, not defensiveness. People around you will understand where you stand, and that builds trust.
Absolutely. And commitment, that vital step from episode 7. When you've integrated these skills, committing to your decision becomes easier because you've done the thoughtful work beforehand. You've examined your values, listened to your gut, considered the options, and planned for potential outcomes. That leads to a stronger, more authentic commitment.
It's like building a solid foundation. All these episodes have been about placing another brick, another beam, until we have this sturdy structure of decisiveness that we can rely on. And the idea of reducing option overload from episode 8 and navigating decisions with others in episode 9, those all support this integrated identity too. If you can simplify choices and collaborate effectively, your decisive self emerges more strongly.
Right? When you embody a decisive identity, you don't just make good decisions, you're a decisive person. This confidence extends outward. Think about episode 10, The Decisive Leader. When you integrate these skills, you naturally inspire others. People gravitate towards your clarity and conviction. And for those of us with children, as we discussed in episode 11, demonstrating a decisive identity is one of the most powerful ways to teach them.
So, how do we really solidify this integration? It sounds like ongoing practice and self awareness.
It truly is. It's about recognizing when you're employing these skills. When you find yourself trusting your gut, pause for a moment and acknowledge, that's my intuition at work. When you articulate a decision, note how easily it flows because you've already considered your values. It's about actively noticing these moments. You can also create personal review rituals. Perhaps at the end of each week, you reflect on a few key decisions you made, how you felt about them, and how effectively you applied the strategies we've discussed.
That sounds like a great way to anchor the learning. So, I've defined my values, I'm listening to my gut, I'm not afraid of making a choice quickly, I can handle when things don't go as planned, I can explain my decisions, and I can commit to them. This is all starting to feel like it's really sinking in.
And that's the goal. Your decisive identity is a living thing. It grows and strengthens with practice. It means you approach life with less anxiety about what if and more confidence in what now. You become someone who acts with purpose, learns with resilience, and moves forward with conviction. It's about embracing your agency and understanding that your ability to decide is one of your greatest strengths.
It's empowering to think of it that way. It's not just about making choices, it's about becoming the kind of person who makes those choices with confidence and clarity. That transformative power is something we've explored throughout the series.
Indeed, this episode, The Decisive Identity, is about weaving together all the threads of our conversations. It's your personal declaration that you are ready to embrace a life of confident action and commitment. We've built the framework, and now it's time to inhabit it. Remember, decisiveness isn't about never being wrong. It's about your ability to move forward purposefully, learn, and adapt.
So, to recap, we've discussed integrating our core skills, values, intuition, action, error management, communication, and commitment into a cohesive, decisive identity. This integration is achieved through ongoing practice, self-awareness, and reflective review. Your decisive identity allows you to approach life with less anxiety and more confidence, influencing your actions and inspiring others. Next episode, we'll explore advanced decision-making frameworks to further refine your strategic choices.
Welcome back to the Decisive Mind. Last time, we integrated skills for a decisive identity. Now, we're elevating our decision game with advanced frameworks.
That sounds complex, Alex. How do these structured frameworks fit with our intuition and values?
Great question. Intuition and values are our foundation. These frameworks are sophisticated tools for analyzing complex choices systematically, especially when stakes are high.
So we're adding more tools, not abandoning our gut feelings.
Precisely. Let's start with decision trees. Imagine your choices branching out like a tree. At the top is your decision, with lines for each option. These lines can lead to more decisions or to different outcomes.
So, it's like a flowchart for decisions?
Exactly. The power comes when you add probabilities and payoffs. You estimate the likelihood of each outcome. For example, Launching a new product might have a 70% chance of a positive market response and a 30% chance of a negative one.
And how does that help make the decision?
You assign a value to each outcome. A positive response might yield $1 million, a negative one, a $50,000 loss. You calculate the expected value for each path by multiplying probability by value. This quantifies risk and reward.
That's much more concrete than just "this feels right." It forces us to confront numbers and chances.
Absolutely. Next, consider cost-benefit analysis. This compares the costs and benefits of a decision systematically. List all costs, financial, time, effort, stress, risk, and all benefits, financial gains, happiness, health opportunities.
And then we just compare the lists?
Ideally, you assign monetary or relative values. For a new job, cost might include less family time and more stress. Benefits are higher income and career growth. You weigh the value of each.
So, we're making the intangible tangible, putting a weight on things that are hard to compare.
Precisely. It forces objectivity, preventing us from getting caught up in excitement or dread. It ensures we see the full picture.
What about that weighted scoring model?
It's fantastic for comparing multiple options against several criteria. Imagine choosing an apartment. Criteria might be location, size, rent, and amenities. You assign importance to each criterion. Location might be a 5, size a 3, rent a 4, amenities a 2.
So, the weight is how important each criterion is.
Correct. Then, for each apartment, you score it on each criterion. Apartment A might get a 4 for location, 5 for size, 2 for rent, and 4 for amenities.
And you multiply the score by the weight?
Yes, for apartment A, location is 4 times 5, 20, size is 5 times 3, 15, rent is 2 times 4, 8, and amenities is 4 times 2, 8. Adding those weighted scores gives you 51. You do this for every apartment.
The apartment with the highest total weighted score is the best choice based on our priorities.
That's right. It's a systematic way to compare complex options against your priorities. This is where you can directly map your values into a decision framework.
Decision trees, cost-benefit analysis, weighted scoring, they all break down big decisions into smaller pieces.
That's the core benefit. They provide structure and objectivity, helping you move past indecision with a clear path. It's about making the best possible decision, not necessarily the perfect one. These tools complement our gut feelings and values, providing rigor.
So, we've covered decision trees for outcomes, cost-benefit analysis for upsides/downsides, and weighted scoring for multiple options against criteria. These are powerful techniques for complex decisions.
They are. Remember, these frameworks are tools. Use them thoughtfully, combined with your intuition and values. They provide the rigor to back up your instinct.
And that leads us perfectly into our final episode, where we'll focus on long-term vision and decisive strategy.
Indeed. Next episode, long-term vision and decisive strategy. Welcome back to the Decisive Mind. In this, our final episode, we unite our lessons on choices with long-term vision and strategy.
It's our season finale, Alex. What a journey! We've moved from indecision to trusting our gut, defining values, and taking swift action. We've learned about handling missteps, communicating choices, and the power of commitment.
Exactly, Lisa. Today, we're scaling up. We're talking about how your current decisions build the future you want. It's about connecting today's actions to tomorrow's aspirations and creating an adaptive strategic path. Remember building a foundation? This is about deciding what skyscraper you want to top it.
So, it's not just a good decision for today, but for 5, 10, or 20 years from now. That sounds daunting. How do we connect immediate choices with a distant future?
Great question. The first step is clarity on that long-term vision, your North Star. What does your ideal future look like across different life areas? Career, personal growth, relationships, health, finance. Picture that perfect future state. What core principles guide you there? We talked about values in episode 3, remember? Those are your anchors for long-term strategy.
Right.
So, before I decide to take on a project, I should ask, does it align with the bigger picture I'm painting for my life?
Does it move me closer to